The Total Screen proudly presents their official podcast, OnScreen, with your hosts, Tyson Gifford and William Rohrig. Everybody, and welcome to On Screen, the official podcast of the Total Screen. My name is Tyson.
My name is Will.
And today we are going to be talking about Fargo Season 5. We mentioned that last week at the end of our podcast last week, that's what we're going to be talking about. And the final episode just aired today. We are recording this on Wednesday, the 17th of January, and that episode just came out today. So the season just finished, and we can talk about it. We also have an On the Horizon segment to go over, and an On Beat segment to talk about some trailers. Let's kick things off with On the Horizon. On the Horizon. On the Horizon is, of course, where we talk about what's coming up in the next week or so. And we're starting things off with Griselda, which is coming on Thursday, January 25th to Netflix. It is starring Sofia Vergara from Modern Family as the titular Colombian drug kingpin. So, female drug kingpin, Colombian drug kingpin drama series on Netflix.
Oh, okay.
Then on Thursday, January 25th, on Peacock, In the Know is coming out. That is a new comedy. It's like kind of a stop motion animation mixed with like some live action elements. And it's from Zach Woods and Mike Judge. Zach Woods, of course, was in Silicon Valley and The Office. Mike Judge, the creator of Beavis and Butthead and Silicon Valley. And it's kind of a parody of NPR style, like talk shows, basically.
I mean, we're gonna be discussing this in a minute.
Yes.
In more depth.
Next up, we have Masters of the Universe Revolution. Again, we'll also be talking about this later in a few minutes. This is coming also on Thursday, January 25th to Netflix. This is the continuation of the Kevin Smith Masters of the Universe shows. Next up, we have Sexy Beast, also coming Thursday, January 25th to Paramount Plus. This is a prequel series to the 2000 movie. So in 2000, a movie came out, starred Ben Kingsley, called Sexy Beast, and this is like a prequel series to that, I guess. So 24 years later, we get a prequel series to a movie that I still haven't seen.
Right. Yeah.
Also on Thursday, January 25th, Apollo Justice Ace Attorney Trilogy is coming to PC, PS4, Xbox One, and Switch.
Nice.
It's interesting when you have these games and they're not coming to PS5 or Xbox Series X and they're just relying on backwards compatibility. Like, they just don't care. It's just, that's it.
Right, yeah.
It's just, I think that's new. That's something new that I don't think we've seen before, really. So, that's kind of interesting to me. But on Friday, January 26th, Expats, a new miniseries, is coming to Amazon Prime. This stars Nicole Kidman and she leads a cast. It's set in Hong Kong. And, of course, being called Expats, it's about people that are living in a foreign country that's foreign to them. So yeah, that's Friday, January 26th on Amazon Prime. Then also on Friday, January 26th, Masters of the Air, a new miniseries, comes to Apple TV Plus. This is from the team that made Band of Brothers and The Pacific. So they made those really good epic war series about World War II for HBO, and now they've moved over to Apple TV Plus. This is again a World War II war series.
Mm-hmm.
Also on Friday, January 26th, Like a Dragon Infinite Wealth is coming to PC, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Series X. Also coming on Friday, January 26th is Tekken 8 to PC, PS5, and Xbox Series X. So that is it for our On the Horizon segment. Next up, we have On Beat. This week on Beat, we are going to be talking about 6 trailers that dropped in the last couple of weeks. that we're going to go over here. We're going to start things off with In the Know. We mentioned this before in our On the Horizon segment. It's from Zach Woods and Mike Judge. Zach Woods is playing the main character of the series and is also producing it. Mike Judge is producing the show as well. And yeah, it's about NPR radio show. It's going to have all the stuff that's basically taking place at the radio show is going to be animated, like a fully animated series with different characters. But then when it's actually showing the show, the main character will be stop animated, but the guests on the show are actually like live action, like filmed appearances.
Yeah, this is just weird. I don't know. I had kind of a visceral negative reaction to this. Mostly because I don't like the animation. None of the humor in the trailer really landed for me. I'm not so sure, like, I'm kind of, like, vibing with the hook of, like, oh, we're gonna have human guest interviews from celebrities.
It kind of makes me think a little bit of Beavis and Butthead in the sense that Beavis and Butthead was broken up into, like, two kinds of segments.
Yeah.
Like, they'd have skits, and every episode would have, like, two skit segments. And then between those skits, there'd be, like, music videos, or, like, in later versions of Beavis and Butthead, they did other things, like...
Yeah, it feels like they're trying to, like, reproduce that for this show. And I'm like, I don't know, like, and also, like, it's been done, and to better effect, previously, because we had Space Ghost Coast to Coast, and we also had Dr. Katz, who, while they didn't have, like, the guests in live action, the guests were, like, comedians, they were animated along with the rest of the show, but they were still, like, real comedians, Like,
yeah, and it's not animated at all, but you also have something like, for example, Between Two Ferns being like a spoof of a talk show.
A talk show, yeah, so it's kind of like, this looks like it's gonna be, like, half talk show spoof, half workplace comedy, which is like, I guess I will have to actually sit down and watch a full episode to see everything in context, because I feel like I have like a nagging, nothing in this trailer worked. I have a nagging feeling that maybe it's just because of like what they're going for doesn't like really present itself well when it's cut up and presented out of context. I don't know.
It's Mike Judge, though.
Yeah.
Zach Woods, I'm a fan of the actor. Not necessarily know him for any of his work, as a producer or a writer.
So,
but I love Mike Judge, and Zach Woods I like as an actor, so
yeah,
I'll definitely check it out.
Judge and Woods co-created In the Know with Brandon Gardner.
Who I'm unfamiliar with.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that is In the Know.
Yeah, it's interesting, because like the talent behind it and the way like it just from the trailer didn't immediately land with me. I don't know.
Next, we got our first full trailer for Three Body Problem, which is the next series from the creators of Game of Thrones based on the famous trilogy of books, from China that were like an international bestsellers. So, Game of Thrones creators moved to Netflix. I imagine there is going to be like tons of resentment when this show debuts, regardless of the quality of the show.
Oh yeah.
One benefit though, for anybody nervous about it because it's from the creators of Game of Thrones and how the last season of that turned out and everything, one positive to look forward to on this one is that Game of Thrones wasn't always bad. It was very good, and then it turned bad, and it turned bad when they ran out of content. Three Body Problem is a complete series. Like the book series, the trilogy is done. It's all been out for years.
Right.
There is no guessing. There is no making up their own story, trying to figure out what to do and how to end their story, without having book material. Like this is from completed material. So, That being said, I think the trailer looks okay. You said that, like, nothing's really grabbed you yet with it. I feel kind of the same. Nothing's really grabbed me. I think the cast is good. I'm
like I said,
interested in the cast.
Looks like it's got a good cast. Obviously they got a budget behind it. It's got gorgeous visuals. Obviously, like, there's this mystery. It's just, it's not grabbing me in any real way to, like, make me want to watch it or make me want to, like, sign up for Netflix and go,
It's a very complex plot. Like, I heard a rundown of the plot, like, not like a description of the whole series, but the basic, like, concept plot, of it was, I heard it being described one time, and I'm like, well, it's like a really complex, like, deep, hard sci-fi. And, it'd be interesting to see how that's interpreted to a series, like how the themes and stuff of it are interpreted, because it's kind of one of those impossible series, which Game of Thrones also was, where people thought it could never be adapted or whatever. And And Game of Thrones was like that as well. And, it's interesting. We'll have to see if it's any good.
Oh, yeah.
Next, we got the trailer for Masters of the Universe Revolution. Again, we mentioned this in our On the Horizon segment. It is the next continuation of the He-Man series, the one done by Kevin Smith. So you watched the original, like the first season of it or something, of the Kevin Smith one?
Yeah, it was fantastic.
Yeah, I still haven't seen that. So you're going to have to tell me what's going on here.
Okay, well,
describe it. What's happening?
I'm not describing anything. It's what's happening is Masters of the Universe stuff. Just watch the show.
Next up, we got a trailer for Badland Hunters, which is a new Korean movie coming to Netflix, and it stars the dude from the Eternals.
Yeah. It looks cool. From what I could gather from this, it's like the scientist was doing experiments and he turned these people into like monsters and now like there's hordes of like these like zombie like people and I don't know, it just looked cool.
Just a cool Korean action movie.
Yeah.
Next up, we got a trailer for Abigail. Now, most notably for me is that I really loved the movie Ready or Not, which was a horror movie that was really kind of inventive and interesting and kind of funny and just a really cool movie. And then the creators from that really took off from doing Ready or Not, the directors, and ended up directing the most two recent Scream movies. And they got like a lot more kind of acclaim from that. The Scream movies, I think, have kind of just fallen apart now.
Well, I mean,
for various reasons.
First two, the third one is falling apart because of the production company. I will say, like, the producers here, for this movie, we're not involved in, like, the third Scream movie that they're trying to make right now.
Mm-hmm.
Outside, like, I think, like, a producer role, like, executive producer.
Probably just given to them, because of their previous contributions.
Yeah, but they weren't, like, really involved in this. So as far as, like, the current Scream movie that has completely, like, fallen apart, but they were involved in, like, the last two that they did.
Yes. And so this movie, Abigail, it's about these different, it looks like it's a group of kind of mercenaries or criminals or something that are basically paid to, like, kidnap, watch over, or whatever.
They're kidnapping the daughter of, like, this very wealthy, influential person.
Yeah.
In order to get a big payday out of them.
But what they don't know is that this kid that they kidnapped is a vampire.
Yeah.
And it just is going to turn into a bloodbath, apparently. And it looks like a really cool concept. And
it looks really fun.
Yeah.
It looks like, there's a lot of things like these people clearly out of their depth are like starting to talk about like, you know, like, oh, how do you kill a vampire? It's like, it looks like it's going to be a great time.
Yeah. And then lastly, we had a trailer for Spaceman. We had a teaser for this before, and all the teaser did was kind of convey tone. It was like, okay, this is an Adam Sandler movie on Netflix. So you're like, ooh, low expectations, bad comedy and stuff. And it's like, oh no, but this is supposed to be like a more serious Adam Sandler property. And Adam Sandler has kind of two careers paths. He has his comedy movies, which have gone to the point of now I think he just makes them, he just cashes a paycheck and films in Hawaii so he can go to Hawaii. And those are like his comedies that are really successful on Netflix for some reason right now. And then he has his serious movies. You know, like he did recently that one gambling movie. What was that one? They got like so much acclaim, you know, and he did, you know, of course, can't think of any of the names. I'm drawing a blank, but basically Adam Sandler has like those two paths, like serious movies and comedy movies, and they're like completely different career trajectories that he's on simultaneously. And Spaceman, it looks like it's more in the vein of like a serious Adam Sandler movie.
Yeah, exactly.
And apparently what's going on in this trailer is that he is in space and he encounters a spider-like creature voiced by Paul Dano, who most people might know as the Riddler in the Batman. And it's like he's bonding with this alien or something, communicating with this alien spider in space. I have no idea where this is going. Looks like it's going to be a pretty existential movie, though. Existential sci-fi with a strong drama core. How does it look to you?
It looks like going to be a strong drama.
Mm-hmm. But that is it for our trailer section and our on-beat segment, and that leaves only full spoilers. This week on Full Spoilers, we are talking about Fargo Season 5. I remember when I just had started this, and I was messaging you and going like, dude, even if you haven't seen all the other seasons of Fargo, just jump in on Season 5. It's really good.
Yeah, so I need to watch, because I'm pretty sure I watched Season 2. I watched Season 1,
Season 2 is the one with Kirsten Dunst and Jesse Plemons, and it takes place in the 70s, I think.
Yeah. It goes into the history of the father of the one female cop from the first season.
Yes.
Yeah, I saw Season 1, Season 2. I did not see Season 3, Season 4.
Yeah.
I hear Season 4 is god-awful from multiple people.
I thought Season 4 was a bit of a I thought Season 3 was the worst of the bunch.
Really?
It had a great villain.
A lot of people say Season 4 is the worst of the show. That it just does not work. Chris Rock is not good in that.
I have kind of mixed feelings because there's some really interesting shit they did in Season 4, and I think that's good. There's some really strong characters that just are weird Coen Brother characters. There's a character named Dr. Senator, and that's that's not any titles, that's just his name. His actual name is Dr. Senator. And he's just such a Coen Brothers character. He's great, you know? And there's some other cool stuff in Season 4 too. There's a reveal that a certain character is a character from another season, from Season 2 actually, but you're seeing them when they're younger. And that's really cool. And there's an episode focusing on that character that's shot in black and white, and the whole thing is done. It's just a really crazy episode. It's a really good episode.
But this season, you can jump into it, because, as far as I know, or can tell, there's no callbacks to any other seasons of Fargo in this.
Yeah, even there are callbacks in Fargo seasons, you don't have to see it in any specific order, you know?
Right, yeah.
So, but yeah, Fargo Season 5 I don't really know if there's any connections to anything that's going on. Maybe there is, and I'm unaware, but it's just a really good season of Fargo.
Yeah, oh yeah, it's a really good season of television, period.
Yeah, we mentioned this a lot last week when we were doing our Best of 2023. It won quite a few awards from both of us, but mostly from me, I think.
When we did our podcast last week, neither of us have watched the last 2 episodes. Obviously, the last episode just came out today, so but the second to last came out the day we recorded last week's podcast, and we haven't watched that yet either.
Mm-hmm.
And so everything we said in our awards was kind of conditional on this show sticking the landing and not just falling apart in the end zone.
I think it stuck the landing masterfully.
Yes. Thankfully that did not happen. Yeah. Oh, this was a fantastic season of television.
Yeah. It had so many great characters. There were characters that were just iconic, like Danish Graves, played by Dave Foley, who's the attorney for Lorraine Lyon, played by Jennifer Jason Leigh, who was
again
a very vindictive and strong female character that it paid off at the end, because you don't necessarily like her at the beginning. She's kind of adversarial to the main character, and you're kind of and then as it goes on, it ends up becoming a great part of the comeuppance of the series, because you're okay, this character is vicious and brutal. Yes. And now, you're seeing that being put to good use, actually.
yeah, exactly.
And so it's a really fun moment in the final episode with that. Yeah, I mean, Temple is the main featured actress in this as Dorothy Dot.
The main protagonist of the season. And we mentioned this last week. I mean, John Hamm just plays a fantastic villain in this.
Yes.
Roy Tillman is one of the meanest, nastiest people on TV in a long time.
Yeah. He's just a really horrible fucking person. And he's a great villain. He won Best Villain for me. Did he win for you for Best Villain as well?
Yes.
Yeah, and he also won a Best Performer, I think, from you, or a runner-up or something.
Yeah. Because I saw this, I was no. I mean, it's obvious at this point.
Yeah. Also, Joe Keery from Stranger Things.
Yes,
playing
Joe
his
Keery,
son, playing Roy Tillman's son, Gator.
Doing a really good job of playing an asshole, which is kind of funny because when I first saw Joe Keery in Stranger Things and his character, I assumed this was gonna be a lot more similar in Stranger Things, where I assumed he was gonna be kind of a jerk and a bully.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up, the Stranger Things character ended up not being that very much, but
he kind of was initially, and then he improved.
Well, this person is full asshole.
I do like his ending, though.
Yes, I do like his ending.
I remember when we were watching the ending, and we'll get to more of the details of the plot later, but we were watching the ending and there was a part where he was like, where it cut to him in the last episode and he got himself, untied and started like walking and stuff. And my mom said like, I don't feel sorry for him at all. And I said like, I think he deserves what happened to him.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I feel bad because imagine that you're like literally had your eyes taken from you and then you're in winter in Minnesota out in the snow in the middle of nowhere, abandoned by your father in like your weakest moment when you're like literally blinded and,
There's a tragedy to Gator's character in that he's as awful as he was because of the environment he grew up in. The person who raised him, he grew up to like admire his dad, to admire Roy. And you can tell, like, even though, like, he's trying so hard to emulate Roy. Also, like, he didn't have his mom.
Yeah.
Like, Roy killed his mom at some point in his life. And so he's basically only had Roy and the other women, like, Roy brought into his life.
Yeah, I think there's two things that I think they did a really good job on in relation to this that I wanted to point out. And one is that his mom dying is something that's obvious. Being killed by Roy is being very obvious. It was never explicitly stated.
No, yeah, they never explicitly confirmed
He doesn't
that.
even know what happened to his mom, like at all, I don't think. He might have guessed at some point, but he has no idea. Dot, / Nadine, literally had a whole delusion where she thought that his mom was still alive.
Well, we get confirmation that Gator doesn't know what happened to his mom because his conversation with Dot in the finale, because Dot had told him, in the barn that she saw his mom.
Mm-hmm.
And, that was a delusion. I don't know if, like, Dot was, like, still in the mindset at that point of thinking, like, that experience was real.
That was confirmed, too, because she said, because when she said that she did not see his mom, she said, I thought I had.
Yeah.
So she was kind of in a moment of delusion.
He's asking her in that scene, like, did you really see my mom? And, like, if he knew what happened to her, like, he wouldn't, like, be asking Dot those questions. Obviously. Yeah.
So I like that aspect. I think John Hamm made it very clear or John Hamm's character, Roy Tillman, made it very clear that he killed her and buried her under his, like, bathtub thing that he sits in, which is where he also ended up dumping the body of the stylish Dana Graves. And when we don't know for sure, but that seems like directly implied on several occasions that not only did he kill her, but that he buried her in that exact spot. It was implied on several different moments. And we did see Danish Graves' body being dumped in there. And we did have Dot like trying to hide inside there. And she picked up when she was being discovered in there, she picked up something to be a weapon and it was like a leg bone.
Right. Yeah.
So that means there's been other bodies in there.
So I don't want to go around discussing like plot points or like this happened or that happened. So I think
I don't want to break down the whole season. I just want to go into certain characters and things you liked.
Yeah, the thing I want to do is I want to like break down the characters, discuss the characters and their moments, and then kind of like bring that to like a closing discussion. So let's let's start with Dot, obviously. Let's go from the top of the list here that you have in the notes.
Yeah, so Dot is an interesting character because she's very much in that Fargo, Minnesota thing, but we see at the very opening scene of the season is she gets into like a brawl.
Yeah, there's a brawl happening at their school, which they never explain, by the way. They never explain why that was happening or what that was about.
Yeah. I think it's just political divisiveness and...
Yeah, they never explain it. It's just a vehicle to get the story rolling.
Yeah.
Basically.
Because the secret to Dot is that she's not really Dot. Like, she's Dorothy Dot Lyon. She married Wayne Lyon, the son of Lorraine Lyon, and is living this life as this Minnesota housewife and, seems to have a great life, a very caring, her mother-in-law is a bit of a bitch, but her husband is very caring. She has a great daughter, it's like...
Yeah, she's doing her best, like, to live the classic American, domestic dream.
Yeah.
She seems to have like a perfect life in this place.
But this event that kickstarted the series, this fight, led to her being fingerprinted and, photographed, which exposed her because she has a secret. She was actually somebody else. She was a woman named Nadine.
She was Nadine, and she was the former wife of Roy Tillman, forced marriage.
A child bride, marriage.
When she was a teenager.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like, it was a relationship that she did not want to be in, and so we find out, like, she escaped from Roy and vanished, and nobody, like, knew what happened to her until, like, her prince went into the system, and we find out that because Roy is sheriff of, like, this county in, like, North Dakota?
I believe so.
Yeah, Roy is, like, the sheriff, and he's not, like, a lawman. He's, like, his law. He's one of these people who believes he's anointed by God and that he operates by his own version of the law, not the law is like it's written.
I think he's somewhat based on that one sheriff from Arizona that ran for... You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, I definitely think that there's some inspiration there, for sure.
Yeah, the guy that, turned out was trying to pick up, or oftentimes picked up, teenagers at the mall when he was an adult, and stuff, and was banned from the mall for it, and basically he got canceled and pulled out and everything, but he's a very MAGA Republican guy. Yeah.
Basically because of this, Roy finds out about Nadine getting fingerprints and knows, where she's hiding. And so, Roy has son.
It's interesting with Roy because he feels she has broken a trust from him. So it's not even so much that he wants her back. It's that he feels like they made vows before God, even though she was forced into it, because he's a misogynist and a Christo-fascist,
Well, he sees her as his property.
Yeah.
It's his
and that property abandoned him. And so it must be returned.
Yeah.
And that's kind of like a theme in this season in general of the idea of people that live by a code, that doesn't have exceptions.
So Noah Hawley said the overriding theme of this season is debt.
Yeah. And that ties into another character we'll get to later, Ol Munch. We'll get to him later, but he's very much played on that kind of theme as well.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Yeah. So we know Nadine, she has this past where she was tied to this abusive man, very powerful man who wants her back and now knows where she is. And so he has his son hire these hitmen to kidnap her and bring her back, which ends up being Ol Munch and a sidekick.
Yeah, a sidekick who does not make it out of that encounter alive because Dot is, as Ol Munch calls her, a lion or a tiger.
Tiger,
yeah.
Yes.
Dot is a tiger. She's not a mouse.
She's more than Ol Munch expects.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ol Munch himself is very capable. The person he's with is not.
Right, yeah.
And so that person he's with does not survive the encounter.
And it's funny because, we don't know, how Ol Munch and his partner met, obviously. But it's funny because, there's a scene where Roy is asking Gator, where he found, Ol Munch. And Gator says, I didn't find him, I found his partner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And brought Ol Munch into their lives.
Yeah. Yeah,
Ol Munch is, and we've talked about this, you and I have talked about this before, and I think we mentioned it as well on last week's podcast when we were talking a little bit about Fargo, but Ol Munch is very clearly drawn from No Country for Old Men.
Yes.
Because the thing with Fargo, and I mentioned this last week, that's one of the things that's so cool about Fargo as a series is that Noah Hawley draws inspiration from the collected works of the Coen brothers rather than from just Fargo, He doesn't try to just recreate Fargo every season. He tries to craft the story in that Fargo setting, in that Minnesota, North Dakota area setting, and makes a new crime story every season that takes place in that setting and populates it with themes and ideas drawn from other Coen brothers movies. And clearly Ol Munch is heavily inspired by No Country for Old Men, Javier Bardem's character in No Country for Old Men. He's got a weird haircut and he's deadly.
Oh yeah, I love all much. He's the supernatural element of the season because it's made explicitly clear that he is centuries old.
That was like an interesting touch because we got this this weird cutaway flashback in like episode
so like the
3 or
1400s.
Yeah, it cut back to like Wales in like the 1400s.
Yeah.
And it's about a sin eater. It's a scene and it's about a sin eater and the sin eater is Munch. And it's like, and you watch that scene and you're like, is this some kind of like a weird like thematic scene? Like not actually a flashback, but just some weird thematic thing that like set up something in the story.
Yeah, they don't like really touch it again until like the finale, like the end of the last episode where old Munch gives his origin, gives his backstory, and basically like confirms, like he's old. He's immortal.
Yeah. It just makes him an interesting character. I guess we're talking about Old Munch now. Yeah,
we're talking about Old Munch. Well, you might as well. Because, he's an interesting character because he doesn't show up much in this. But his whole deal is he's a sin eater. Like, so basically, yes, he described it. Like in this, like he took the money from Roy and Gator to do the job of kidnapping Dot for them. Right. And that's been his thing, for a while because he said, like he used to eat the fleas off of rats until like a rich man offered him a meal. And he said, but that meal was sin. And so he's been eating food offered from rich men this entire time. Basically, he's been eating sin this whole time.
Yeah. And so he's a person that has a very strong code about, as you mentioned, the theme of being debt, about a price being owed. So something happens and he's very firm about, like this now must be balanced. The scales must be balanced with another action. We'd mentioned Gator Tillman being blinded. He was blinded by Ol Munch because Ol Munch, accidentally killed a woman, an old lady, when he was trying to kill Ol Munch.
Gator accidentally killed the woman.
Isn't that what I said?
You said Old Munch accidentally killed a lady.
Oh, well, Gator accidentally killed an old lady that Old Munch was staying with.
Yes, an old woman. And so, like, Munch extracted his price from that. It's interesting because, this leads to, like, the last scene in the season. It's probably like one of the best sequences in the entire season too, where, after everything's said and done, Old Munch shows up at Dot's house, because...
Again, this is a callback to No Country for Old Men, but it goes a very different way.
It goes a very different way. Old Munch is there because Dot owes him a debt. According to him, he needs to extract a debt from Dot. And Dot doesn't play along with this at all. Dot basically says, no, you're going to help us cook dinner or you're going to leave. And it's funny because like he starts to do it and through discussion, Dot brings out, why can't debt be forgiven? Wouldn't it be better if debt was just forgiven? And, she also points out when he took the money to kidnap her, the stuff Dot did to him, like his ear and stuff, that was the risk he assumed when he took the job.
Yeah. She compares it directly to says like, that would be like being angry at the table you stubbed your toe on.
Yeah. And I really love it too because like, again, it's perfect because when the meal is done, when they sit down to eat, Munch gives his entire, origin, his entire backstory to them. And when he mentions, like, he's been eating sin, Dot just, like, smiles and says, well, you just need to eat something that's made with love instead.
Yeah.
And she hands him a biscuit, the biscuits that they made together.
Mm-hmm.
And the biscuit, and he eats it, and the biscuit frees him of his curse. Frees him of his
he gets
sin.
a big smile on his face at the end.
Yeah. And so it's kind of perfect the way like his story like ends there.
Mm-hmm.
It goes in a very different direction than what you would expect it to, but I think I love that choice because it goes in a different direction like that. I think I love that choice most of all in this season.
Let's talk about Lorraine Lyon and Danish Graves.
Yes.
Jennifer Jason Leigh and Dave Foley. Initially, they were like very antagonistic, as I said, and then as the series went on, you started to kind of relate a bit more, and you started to actually be able to enjoy the things that made Lorraine kind of almost unbearable at the beginning. It's just how vicious and how petty she could be and how mean.
Yeah, she
ended
can
up
be
becoming
mean.
Strengths because they were applied to the right places.
Yes. Here's the thing, like with Lorraine is when we first see her before everything goes down, when she's out of loop, she does not like Dot because she's distrustful of Dot. She thinks Dot is just with Wayne because she's trying to sniff out the family money,
Mm-hmm.
She thinks Dot is a gold digger or she's up to something. Lorraine doesn't know what. So she's very antagonistic towards Dot because she does not trust her.
And when it becomes clear of what's going on, she still doesn't necessarily have sympathies for Dot. And then there's a great part with the police officer, Indira, who is, communicating to Lorraine and hands her Dot's file. And she says, like, you're seeing Dot all wrong. She's like, you're looking at her as like, oh, she was a gold, like, I thought of her initially as a gold digger, but turns out she's just a victim, and I don't believe in victims or something like that. And she's like, Dot's not a victim. Dot's somebody who fought back hard, And
then, when Roy shows up and tries to get Lorraine to give Dot up to him, Lorraine, she finds a new target for her antagonism. She does not like this man. She does not like this man demanding that she give up her son's wife to him. And
a lot of it plays on like the misogyny that Lorraine has had to deal with.
Yes.
Because they play on this with like she's having a business meeting with some people and they're like not taking her seriously because she's a woman. And she basically has to like crush them under heel to get them to kind of understand that like, no, she is not to be trifled with, and to like get the business rolling and stuff. And here you have a character like Roy Tillman who comes in and is basically like, yeah, I see you're successful and stuff. Doesn't mean a thing to me. I'm the man, I'm more important and stuff like that. And this immediately rubs Lorraine the wrong way. And then you factor in the file that was given to her about Dot, which she reluctantly looked at. And it was the end of one of the episodes where she wasn't going to look at it. And then she just decided to look at it. And it like gave her that moment of like, oh, she suddenly, not only did she now hate this Roy Tillman even more, but now she like feels kind of a kinship with Dot.
Yes.
Which was like an interesting turnaround for her character. And like I said, everything, all the negative traits about her that make her very antagonistic at the beginning of the season are still in place.
Yes.
Or maybe even worse, but they're just directed at the right targets now.
Yes, exactly. And so she's great. The scene in the finale where, she confronts Roy in prison and she basically she tells him she's basically paid off all the inmates in there to make Roy's life hell.
To just rape and beat him for the rest of his life.
Yeah. It's so great.
Yeah. Cause Roy was like going on a monologue about how he actually thinks that prison has the right of it. It's the way the world should be because he's a strong man, and that's what prison allows. The strong rape the weak. The strong, the races are divided. Like all these things that match his prejudices. And she just flips that on him. She's like, because he thinks he's going to get out of there, that he's going to be able to just get the case dismissed and everything. And she's like, I'm the biggest funder to the Federalist Society. I pay for all the judges. It's like, and what's funny is like, this clearly paints Lorraine as a very bad person, but it's the right person to put against Roy in that moment, because she's a very bad person, but as I said, she's directing all of that very bad stuff towards the right person finally.
Right, yeah.
So she nails the whole thing down for him, basically just tells him, oh no, this is the way your life is going to be from now on, And by the end, she leaves. He was so cocky and so confident, and when she leaves, she left him a pack of cigarettes, and she said, oh, you might need these. And you see him kind of grab that pack, like something he would have been maybe too proud to do before. And it's like, no, now he realizes how royally fucked he actually is.
Right.
And it made it a great moment of catharsis.
Oh, it was fantastic. Oh yeah. This is probably like Lorraine's finest moment in this entire season.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah, it's crazy because I felt like the comeuppance was almost robbed from us. Dot shot him in the gut and then he got away. And it was like, God damn it. And then he killed the fucking deputy.
Yes.
Who was a great character. We should
talk about them first. Deputy Whitfar, who after Dot was kidnapped for the first time by Old Munch, he got into a confrontation with Old Munch and ended up shot in the leg and hiding out in a gas station while Dot saved him. Dot saved his life.
Yeah.
Basically. And ever since then, he's felt indebted to Dot, So when Dot, gets kidnapped by Roy, he does everything he can to try and rescue her. And he's been such a good character, and yeah, the scene where Roy kills him is, oh man, it's tough. But it makes sense why that happens. And basically why that happens is because he has a code. he's in that moment, he's got his gun drawn on Roy, and he's thinking, like, I gotta do this by the book, I gotta take Roy in alive. Roy doesn't have a moral code. Roy is just, he's down and dirty.
A misogynistic Christofascist.
Yeah. Yeah, he doesn't have, like, this code, like, he has to play by the rules. And unfortunately, that attitude just wins. Because Wit won't just, like, shoot and kill Roy, Roy knows this. Roy sees this. And he takes it as an opportunity to get the upper hand and kill Wit.
Mm-hmm.
And it's unfortunate, but like I saw, like, the Noah Hawley interview about the finale, he basically said, we're claiming this is based on a true story. And so, like, and in reality, the good guys don't always win, and the bad guys don't always lose. And this is just one of those situations.
Yeah, it was a sad death. It just goes towards making you hate Roy even more, and just kind of seeing him as this, like, this squirrel that, like, manages to get away, or not squirrel, but, like, you know what I mean? Like a rat that manages to just slither out and get away whenever he's up against a corner.
He was discussing a sequence of events. They foreshadowed it hard because the whole thing was like Dot shoots Roy in the stomach, and before Dot can finish him off, the FBI arrives. They stop Dot in her tracks, and Roy gets away, and you see that shot where Roy's not there. And that's when you know something horrible is going to happen next. You know from that shot that Roy is making a run for it. You know the next thing that's going to happen is something horrible. And yeah, that's what happens.
I like Roy's downfall in this season because it came from 4 people.
Yes.
So it started with his current wife, who is not, was horrible to Dot and stuff, but Dot had a moment where she talked to her about, what Roy is like. And then she witnessed him killing her father.
Yes.
She saw Roy kill her father, ran off, Roy chased after her, right into Dot holding a gun right on him, shot him in the gut. That Dot being the second person who was in his downfall.
Yes.
She shot him in the gut and took power back from him. He managed to get away from that too, but how did he get caught? Because he had abandoned his son. And when his son crawled out of the fucking path and made his way to get help, he was found by the sheriffs and the SWAT and the FBI, and he immediately gave his father up.
Yes. And so because Roy was making his way to the escape hatch, the same one, where Roy was expecting that nobody was going to be looking and he could make a break for it. He gets up there and instead they're at the entrance of that pathway waiting for him.
Mm-hmm. And Gator gave him up because he gave Gator up.
Yes, exactly.
And that finally broke Gator free of his father and all the shit, basically, that has been the tragedy of his life, as you'd mentioned. So that I liked the moment between Gator and Dot afterwards, because they had played it off before. When Gator had encountered Dot on multiple occasions, there was like an understanding between them that like Gator was like resisting it and trying to be like a bad boy and trying to be like his father's son that does everything his father wants and is, tough and everything like that. He's trying so hard to play that up, but you can tell that there's some history between them. And it's played off when they get to Dot's backstory that they were around the same age or something.
Right.
When Dot became his dad's wife.
And so, there's that relationship to them. And I do like that scene, where Dot's talking to Gator, and she promises to visit him regularly in prison and to bring cookies.
Yeah, I like that, not just because there's like some redemption for Gator in there, but also because of how accepting Gator is of it. Like, Gator's not like, if I'm stuck in prison, will you see me? But I'm gonna get out of these charges. He's just like, will you see me when he's just fully accepted.
Yeah, he's fully accepting his fate at this point.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's had a realization, and I think the realization for Gator came like after his father abandons him.
Yeah.
After Munch delivers him blinded to his father, and his father
that monologue Munch gave when he did it too. Like how he's like, you don't just remove the hand, but you return it useless or devoid of function or something.
Yes.
I love all of Munch's little diatribes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love it. And when he's thrown back to his dad and his dad disowns him, I think that's when Gator has a realization that he was on the wrong path this whole time. You know, and I think that's why, like, at the end of it, he's so accepting of his fate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I think, again, it's like part of Dot's character where she's willing to forgive.
Yeah. It's the monologue that she gave to Munch, you know, about debts being forgiven.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I guess the last plot line to really talk about is kind of a small plot line that disappeared like maybe halfway through the season. And that is, the police officer, Indira, and her boyfriend or husband, I guess, Lars.
I would barely call that a plot line. I would say like it was character development for Indira. Because it was like Indira, you know, like her thing was, you know, she was a police officer in that town. She was struggling to cope with massive amounts of debt, and she was married to this man who was useless. He was useless. He had these ridiculous fantasies. It was clear, like, he picked up these hobbies and then dropped them and just attached these ridiculous fantasies of success to, like, whatever random thing. When we see him in the series, it's like golf. He's spending all this money on, like, golf equipment and shit. But we know,
like virtual, like, golfing stuff so he can, like, practice.
Virtual golfing simulator. But we know, like, because we see, like, but before that, like, it was drums. It was music because he's got this drum set in the garage that he's got a tarp over now. And it's clear he's just bouncing to these things. And he's just freaking useless. And it comes to a head, you know, like when he gives a speech to Indira that he wants a wife. He wants a woman who's gonna like stay at home and take care of his needs and like basically all this like fucking, you know, macho bullshit.
Yeah.
And then he cheats on her with another woman.
Yeah.
and
he's such a garbage character, and he's such and it's just her taking it for so long until the moment that he cheats on her is oddly the best thing he could have done to her.
Yeah.
Because it's the final thing. It's the final nail in the coffin. It's the thing that lets her step away.
Yeah. She steps away, and then Lorraine, like, hires her.
Because she recognizes her competence.
Yes.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to go over from this season?
Danish Graves, his death at the hands of Roy, that was also awful. The thing with Danish Graves, we didn't talk about him, like, Lorraine's lawyer. Like, Lorraine hatches a plot, you know, to mess up the sheriff's election for Roy, which she sends Danish to, North Dakota to rig the election, and he gets these three people to legally change their names to Roy Tillman, and then go to the debate and basically, like, mimic him. This pisses off Roy, and Roy gets into a fight at the debate.
And ends up like backhanding like a female reporter.
Yes, which, you know, Danish planned for, and which Danish satisfies himself that this is enough to ruin Roy. Danish, he's about to report back to Lorraine and go back to Fargo when, you know, he runs into Deputy Witt, and Witt tells him that Roy has Dot. And this leads Danish to confront Roy. Because at this point, Danish is tragic because I don't think Danish realizes exactly who he's dealing with in this moment. He thinks like he's got one over on Roy because he just rigged this debate, embarrassed Roy in front of him, and he thinks like, oh, he has blackmail on him now. Danish is playing by a very different set of rules than Roy plays by. Danish takes Roy for like the scumbags he usually deals with, where, you know, he could blackmail and he could cheat.
And Roy's a murderer.
Yeah, Roy's a murderer. Roy's not that person. And Roy just outright kills him.
Yeah. Yeah. Roy kills a lot of people that kind of, I guess, thought that, you know, they were dealing with somebody that wouldn't be able to do that, you know?
Right.
His father-in-law, same thing, you know?
Oh, yeah.
But it's, Danish Graves is a, like, iconic looking character. And I think what's interesting about him is that he's just like Lorraine's lapdog.
Yes.
And he just kind of does whatever he wants, and he loves his position. And he clearly, like, the only person he seems to really care about is Lorraine. And Lorraine clearly cares a lot about him as well. There's like a bond between them that's more than just lawyer-client, you know?
Right.
Like, I don't think there's a relationship or anything, but there's like a bond, you know? There's like a definite bond between them. And he has that moment when he decides that he's going to save Dot. He's giving up his blackmail material. He's basically betraying Lorraine to save Dot at that moment, because he's like, Lorraine wouldn't go for this, but I need to do this.
He thinks he can make a deal with Roy.
Yeah.
And he thinks wrong.
Yeah. But I think what makes it so tragic is just that he died because he did the right thing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
He turned around and he decided to do the right thing, and that's what killed him.
Yeah, that's the tragedy of it.
Yeah. I guess the only other thing to kind of bring up is that it wouldn't be Fargo without some weird stuff that just seems out of context as more thematic or than actually like having to do with the plot, or that just goes in a weird direction and you don't really understand it right away. That seems to be like a common trend with every season of Fargo. And in here, that is best epitomized by the episode in which Dot is trying to find Roy's ex-wife, his first ex-wife, and ends up finding this community that the ex-wife is like leading. That's all these survivors of domestic abuse. And
yeah, it was like, it was so out there. I gotta admit, at first, like, I thought, okay, this is kind of like, this is jumping the shark. Cause like, there's a whole community of like, what? Like, yeah. I don't know, like,
it's like too convenient and it's a little weird.
He has to make a puppet. I'm like, okay. Yeah. It's too convenient, weird. Yeah, but yeah. She goes through like this whole thing of trying to get Roy's ex-wife to come with her, so she could testify against Roy. And we find out like it was all a fantasy, or it was all a dream that Dot was having. Mm-hmm. None of that was like a real thing.
Yeah, it was just a whole delusion. And the fact that she was hit by a car and, in an accident basically and knocked out kind of like almost cemented the delusion in her head as something that really happened.
Yeah.
And that, like, led to some, like, just kind of weird moments where it's like, what's going on with this? Like, what is the meaning of this? And that's the confusion that we had mentioned earlier with Gator asking her if she had really seen her mom. That was, she thought she had, she was in a state of being kind of delusional and thinking that she had.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's pretty much it for Fargo Season 5. Great season. If you haven't watched it and aren't too spoiled by everything us talking about in full spoilers, go check it out because it's great TV. Every season of Fargo has been good. Some better than others, but this might be my favorite of the ones I've seen. You've just seen the first two. You said you might want a refresher on the second one, but does it rank high amongst the two with you?
Oh yeah, for sure. This is probably like the best season since the first.
Yeah.
I'm going to be honest.
Yeah, I think so too. I think this might be the best season of the show. I think the first was really good, but it kind of ended on a bit of a whimper.
I still think the first is probably better in my mind just because Lord Malvo is such a memorable villain.
Yeah. Season 3 had a really good villain too. But,
yeah.
But it's I think season 1 had really good highs, but season 1 kind of ended on a whimper. Mm-hmm. And it just, it had some other parts I wasn't too into, but it was a great season. I think this might be better, but I don't know. It's hard to say for sure. I think there's a much stronger emotional core in this season, and I think the through line of the plot is better in this season.
Right, yeah.
But that's it for Fargo Season 5. So next week, we are going to be talking about advocates of great entertainment. So if you've listened to this podcast for a while, then like, on basically every anniversary episode, so like episode 100, episode, 25, episode 125, anything like that, we like to do a round of advocates of great entertainment, which is a little thing where we each pick an episode of a show or a movie or something like that to discuss. And each of us is going to be an advocate for a certain episode, and we usually have some kind of a theme to kind of base that on. So the theme for this next week's episode is TV discoveries. And by that, we mean when you came into a show, not just because you're watching it from the beginning or something, or because you heard good things and then you start watching it, but because you just happened to catch an episode, a random episode of the series, and it caught your attention, and then you got hooked. And that's what we're trying to cover with this episode. So, Will, tell us about your pick.
My pick is Supernatural Season 4, Episode 1?
Yes. Lazarus Rising is the name of the episode.
Yeah. It's when I first discovered Supernatural on CW. When I watched it, I thoroughly enjoyed it. So, yeah.
Yep. My pick is Married with Children, Season 2, Episode 20, titled Just Married with Children. It's the game show one. It's like the newlywed game show episode. And yeah, that was my first experience with Married with Children. And I remember it very clearly. I think it was a rerun. I think it was rerunning, but I was still pretty young when I saw it. And I remember that having like a weird impact on me that I'm going to go into next week when we talk about those shows, and like how that episode not only influenced me into getting into Married to Children, but just kind of like just certain things that stuck in my head that had to do with that episode. But that's it until next week. So check those out if you want to watch along with us. Check out Supernatural Season 4, Episode 1, and Married with Children Season 2, Episode 20. Just check those out and join in next week on the podcast as we discuss them. Thank you everybody for listening. You can reach me on Twitter. I'm at Tyson Gifford. You can reach Will. He is at Foxel Hero. You can check out our website, thetotaliscreen.com. If you go to our website and open up a container story for any of the podcast episodes, scroll down to the last paragraph. You'll see all the relevant links to all of our social accounts, our RSS feed for the podcast, everything like that. You can also subscribe to the podcast through your favorite podcast client of choice, like Apple Podcasts or Pocket Casts, and the entire backlog of our podcast and more is available on our YouTube channel. So thank you everybody for listening. Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for listening to the OnScreen podcast, the official podcast of The Total Screen. Visit our website at thetotaliscreen.com. This podcast can be found on any major podcast client, including Pocket Cast and Apple Podcast. The entire backlog of this podcast and other content can be found on our YouTube channel.